we have got just about a minute left of break, and we'll let everybody get back. And I did have a couple of questions that came in, so people were thinking during the break. So Jim, if you could be prepared, I'm going to unmute you, and I've got a couple of follow-up questions that I'm going to send your way promptly at 6:55.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, Jim, if you're ready, let me send a couple of these follow-up questions your way. The first question was from someone who has 29 years of service, and he wants to know, will his pay increase this year not count from my two highest paid yearly income?
So once you get to 29 years, years of service will no longer count. But if your pay continues to go up, we're going to grab the two highest years whenever they occurred. So it very well could help your pension go up. We grab the two highest years whenever they occurred, and we average them together.
Okay. Is SERF income taxable in Missouri if I move out of state?
No, it would be subjected to whatever state income tax you're in. Whatever state you're in as far as state income tax.
Okay.
So if you stay in Missouri, yes, but if you go to a new state, then you're under their laws for state income tax.
All right. Can I name a child or grandchild as my beneficiary, even if I am still married? With them being much younger, would they not get the survivor pension for their lifetime?
I assume you're talking there about the joint and survivor option. And as we mentioned, the age difference could affect some of those options that are available to you. We'd want to know the dates of birth on those people, and then we would know if all of those options are available or if some are not. And then again, we would show you that so you'd know exactly what you're looking at there. Good questions.
Okay, and I think you may have already asked this one or answered this one, but it was presented differently. But does your benefit go up if you work past age 62?
As long as you're still working, you can continue working beyond age 62, and the formula will look at years of service, counting all the way up to 29, and the two highest years of salary whenever they occurred. So it could very well benefit your pension to continue working beyond age 62. If you've already got 29 years in by then and you don't think your salary will go up anymore, then it probably wouldn't. I would call our office and let a benefits specialist talk to you about that.
Okay, and the next one actually is a perfect transition to Robert Eastburn. So Jim, thank you for answering those questions. And again, if you think of additional questions about the pension, send them via chat and we will cover them at the end. But this next question is, like I said, a perfect transition. And the question is SERF and Empower the same retirement? So I'll let Jim, you and Robert, you both can argue over who gets to take that one.
I am going to defer to my buddy Robert to take it away.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. And Connie, thank you for the question. I will address that, but folks, I want to say again how much we appreciate you being a part of our webinar tonight and taking time out of your schedule to be here. So SERF has two components. It has the SERF pension component that Jim's been talking about all of this time. But then there is a SERF savings component. And that makes up the 457 and the 401A part of your benefit. That's a separate benefit from the pension. And that benefit is record kept by Empower. That means any information that you want to receive about that, you're going to work with Empower regarding that. If you have questions about the investment options, distribution options, all of those are going to be different than everything Jim has just gone over about the SERP pension. But both SERP pension and SERP savings are provided by SERP. SERP just has Empower take care of the SERP savings part because you have to have certain licenses and registrations to be able to discuss those investment choices. So that was a wonderful question. I appreciate you asking that. And one of the things I want to say is, as we're jumping into this section and then the next several slides, is we're going to be talking about your SERP savings, the 457 and the 401A, but we're also going to be talking about some very detailed overall retirement readiness discussions. So we're not going to just look at the 457 and 401A, but we're going to talk about how the pension, Social Security, Medicare, possibly even those of you that have a second pension from loggers, how that all works together to answer this question that's on your screen right now, which is how ready are you for retirement? So as we talk about this evening, I want to think about a couple things. There's the old story or joke about how do you eat an elephant? And the way that you eat an elephant is the same way you eat anything else, one bite at a time. I don't know that I would want to eat an elephant, but it's still one bite at a time. And this evening, we're going to look at three big categories of information. We're going to look at the big picture, where we're going to talk about where your retirement income is going to come from. We're going to talk about Social Security. We're going to talk about healthcare costs. We're going to talk about retirement budgets. And we're going to talk about some psychological effects and impacts around retirement. Then we're going to get into some nitty-gritty, some details about some investing principles, some taxation, some inflation concerns, some withdrawal strategies that you may want to consider as you're thinking about how to take the money out during retirement. And then we'll finish up with some additional resources because, folks, my goal tonight is to give you tools that you can use as you're assessing your situation and seeing how prepared for retirement you are. So the first thing we're going to look at is the retirement income as part of this big picture. Where is your money going to come from? Are you going to have enough to make the retirement dream that you imagine happen? Where are you at? Well, the experts say for most people that if you can get to retirement and you can have about 70% of your pre-retirement income, you're probably going to be okay. That things are going to work out because a lot of the expenses, especially early in retirement, go down for most people. Now, for those of you that have had your individual meetings with me and under normal non-COVID circumstances, I'm the guy that comes out to the county and sees you and goes over your savings. You know that we shoot to see how close we can get you to replacing 100% of your working income when you're ready to retire. Now, that's looking at from all sources. So where might some of these sources be? Well, Social Security is going to be a part of your retirement income. We're going to talk about a little bit further on the rules concerning Social Security. Your pensions, SERP and or loggers, also the SERP savings, the 457 and the 401A plan will be a part of your retirement income. Sometimes we run into individuals that have rental properties or farm or cattle, or they sell something and that helps with their retirement income. Sometimes people have a business going into retirement and, sometimes people work other jobs. And basically the idea is to think of this not as just one little piece of the puzzle, but think of it as the entire puzzle. We're going to put all of the pieces together to see what the whole picture looks like. And again, our goal is to see how close you can get to being at 100%. So I'm going to take a moment right now and talk about your SERP savings benefit and how it works. The SERP savings plan allows for a voluntary contribution into what the IRS calls a 457. You can start this contribution at any time throughout the year. You can stop it at any time throughout the year. You can make changes to how much you're contributing throughout the year. Now, there are IRS limits, and for an individual that's over age 50, that's like $26,000, or their total income from the county, whichever is less. But up to the first 6% of your gross salary that you put into the 457, the voluntary part of the plan, it's subject to match every year. And every year, the Board of SERF will vote and determine what that match is going to be. For 2020, it's just like it has been every year since about 2007. It's 50 cents on the dollar. So, Connie, let me just give you an example of how that would work. If you put in $50, every time you put in $50, if that was less than 6% of your total salary for the year, SERF would put in 25 this year. If you put in 100, they'd put in 50. If you put in 10, they'd put in 5. If you put in 6% of your salary, they would put in 3% of your salary in 2020. If, however, you put in 10% of your salary, you can do that. You can put in more than 6%, but the matching component stops at the first 6%. Now, again, the match money is put in once a year in March for your contributions from the previous year. Your money that you put in is automatically vested, but the match money, you do have to have 5 years of service with the county to be vested in the match money. The really good news about that, though, is that 5-year counter started when you came to work for the county, not when you start putting money into the program. So if you have been with the county for several years and you've never done the optional savings plan and done the contributions, if you want to start that, you're going to have an opportunity to schedule a meeting with me after this. You'll be able to pick from my available time openings and schedule a private and confidential. I'll help you get the ball rolling on that if you have questions on that on an individual basis. But just like Social Security, just like these other things on this slide, the 457 and the 401A can become a very big part. The SERF savings benefit can become a very big part of your overall retirement picture. So one of the questions you're going to want to ask is, do you have enough to retire as you're thinking through this? And the answer is, it depends. And it depends on you because, you know, if we surveyed, and we're not going to do this tonight, but if we surveyed everybody on the call and said, hey, what's your perfect dream of retirement? One person might say, well, I'd like to live on a beach somewhere and not have anybody else around me, and that would be their perfect picture of retirement. Somebody else might say, you know what, I want to see if there is a limit to how many fish are in the pond, because I'm going to try to fish it out, and maybe that's their idea of perfect retirement. And somebody else's perfect retirement is, I want to go volunteer and I want to do these things with these charities that are dear to my heart. And all of those are going to have different expenses. So your retirement dream is going to determine what your expenses are going to be, and it's going to be individualized to you. So here's some questions I want you to ask. Am I in a position where I can stop working? What do my expenses look like? What will health care look like? Am I planning on starting a business or having a side job? Where do I want to live? You know, how close to the grandkids can we live? Can we live close to the grandkids but not the kids? I mean, how can we make these things work? So these are all questions you need to be thinking about that are not necessarily just money questions, but what do you want your retirement to be and what do you want it to look like? Because once we get a picture of that, we can start looking at the money questions and go from there. Now, I want to give you a resource right now. This is a fictitious person here that you're seeing on the screen, but this is what their Empower website looks like when they log in to see their SERF savings benefit. And they could see how much they are anticipating of their retirement income of making up between their money in the savings plan, any other assets that they put into the system to track, and an estimate of Social Security. So in this case, this Taylor Smith that we're talking about, Taylor's on track for 71% of where Taylor needs to be in order to meet their retirement goal. So this is a quick, easy way. The web address is right there, empowermyretirement.com, where you can log in, create your own user ID and password, and be able to view your SERF savings benefit and get a 30,000-foot view of what your retirement income may look like. I do want to talk a little bit about Social Security because as we're talking about our retirement income, Social Security is going to be a big part of that for us. And well, let's talk about ages because this was asked earlier. Everyone can start drawing Social Security at age 62. That is the earliest you can draw. It doesn't matter what year you were born in. Once you reach age 62, as long as you have at least 40 quarters, so 10 years of work history where Social Security taxes have been withheld, and then starting at age 62, you would be eligible to start withdrawing your Social Security payment if you wanted to. Now, your full benefit, where you get all of the Social Security benefit that you've earned, will be between age 66, if you were born in 1954 or before, or age 67 if you were born in 1960 and after. If you were born in between those two, 55, 56, 57, and so forth, you just add 2 months to each year for each year you're born. So if you were born in 55, it would be 66 and 2 months. If you were born in 56, it would be 66 and 4 months, and so forth. That is when you get your full benefit. Now, you have the option of waiting till as long as age 70 to start drawing your Social Security benefit. And if you do that, your benefit's going to go up each year you delay by 8% over what your full benefit would be. So there comes a point where you need to look at this and think about, what age am I likely going to start my Social Security benefit? Am I going to fully retire at 62 when I can draw my full SERP pension that Jim was talking about earlier and a partial benefit from Social Security, or am I going to work a little bit longer to try to get a larger benefit from Social Security? This particular slide looks at different income ranges and shows what the average benefit is for somebody in those income ranges if they take it at their full retirement age, somewhere between 66 and 67. Now, a lot of us, we're going to look at those numbers and we're going to think, well, I need a little bit more money than just Social Security to make it work. And I do want to show this slide because this slide shows the impact of drawing Social Security at different ages based off of how long you actually live. And we don't know how long we're going to live, but you know, the average life expectancy for ladies right now is in the upper 80s, and for gentlemen it's in the mid 80s. So what this is saying is if I started, and you see the light blue bar at the very top, if I started drawing my Social Security at 62 and I lived to be age 80, I would draw about $223,000 total on average. Now, if I lived to be 80, but I waited till 66, you see I'd draw $299,000. So if I wait those extra 4 years, even though I'm going 4 years without any payments, I draw more money if I live to be 80. But if I wait till 70 and only live to be 80, then I don't draw quite as much as if I would have started at 66. Now, these numbers will change depending on what your salary work history is, but the percentages are going to be the same. So you can kind of get an idea that the longer your life expectancy is, the more total money you will draw by delaying your Social Security. So folks, that's just a number on paper. You have to fit this number on paper into what your plan is and whether or not you want to wait to draw your Social Security, or if you want to draw it early to make your retirement happen when you want to have it happen. See, there's not a right or a wrong answer. We can look at the numbers. We can look at how those numbers impacted. But ultimately, this is a personal answer that each of you will need to think about. I do also want to give you another resource here. This is ssa.gov, stands for Social Security Administration. It's the actual website for Social Security. You can go there. You can make user ID and password, and you can get a copy of your own Social Security estimate, and it will show you your full retirement age, what your check would be, what it would be at age 62, and what it would be at age 70. I'm just going to make up an example. I'm one of these people that has to work till 67 to get my full Social Security. If I wait till 67, let's pretend my Social Security would be $1,000 a month. If I take it at 62, it's going to be 30% less than that. So instead of getting $1,000 a month at age 67, I would get $700 a month at age 62. And I would draw that every month outside of any cost of living adjustments. When I get to 67, it's not going to go up. It's going to stay at 700 instead of going up to the 1,000. Now, if I, in that same example, if I waited until I was age 70 to get the check to start my Social Security instead of taking it at 67, instead of the $700 a month I would get at 62, or the $1,000 a month I would get at 67, I would get $1,240 a month if I waited till age 70 to draw that. So these are all decisions that when you get your Social Security estimate, you can get an idea of what that's going to look like. Now, I do also want to mention, we have a tool that's available when you have an individual meeting with me where we can estimate your Social Security and get an estimate of what it's going to look like at the different years and kind of help you with that. It's not going to be as accurate as this Social Security website because they have your entire work history, and I don't have access to your entire work history in the tool that we use to estimate it, but we can get you at least in the right ballpark. Again, if you have questions about that on an individual basis, it's not necessarily something for tonight's, but when you get a chance to schedule an individual meeting with me, if you want to do that, I'll be glad to visit with you about that. The next section we're going to talk about is healthcare, but Connie, do we have some questions?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just have one very general question that came in. How far in advance of when I want to receive my Social Security benefit would you recommend that I contact Social Security?
Okay, Social Security will not allow you to do an application more than 5 months in advance under current rules. I would recommend as far in advance as you can to start the paperwork and get the ball rolling. So I would recommend starting to talk to them no later than 5 months in advance so you can turn your paperwork in as close to 5 months in advance as possible. That's a great question.
It is a good question, so thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Robert.
I was just going to ask, did we have any others come in?
We did not. We do have a couple of other follow-up questions for Jim, but we will address those at the end of your presentation. Okay, Robert?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Connie.
Thank you.
So we're going to jump into healthcare. And for many folks, healthcare ends up being the largest expense that we're going to have in retirement. I want to share just a couple numbers that were researched by Empower Institute, which is a part of the Empower company. A healthy 65-year-old male, on average, may need up to $144,000 to cover their health care expenses in retirement. And a healthy 56-year-old female may need about $156,000 to cover those expenses. So these are big numbers when you think about healthcare cost in retirement. And there's a few reasons that's causing this. People are living longer. So since we're living longer, we're naturally going to have more healthcare expenses. Well, another reason is healthcare costs are rising faster than general cost of inflation. So the cost of healthcare is going up faster, and we all see that on a year-by-year basis when we find out what our benefits are going to look like, or we go to the doctor or we have to have a test done. We all see that the things just keep going up in that area. That's just a kind of a part of life right now. But here's another reason that healthcare costs are going up more is people are retiring before they're eligible for Medicare. So I want to spend a little bit of time this evening talking about Medicare and giving you some tools in your toolbox to help you make some decisions on Medicare. So as we're going to talk just about the basics, we're going to talk about some parts and tiers, and Medicare can be complicated, it can be overwhelming, there's a lot of moving pieces. But let's just talk about some basic things that you need to know: coverages and cost, and eligibility and enrollment. Regular traditional Medicare has 4 components: Parts A, B, C, and D. Part A is what covers you when you go into the hospital. Part B is what would cover you if you go into to see a doctor. Those are the 2 traditional Medicare. Several years ago, there was a Part C plan that was made available through Medicare where companies wrap around Part A, B, and sometimes drug coverage in all of this Medicare Advantage plan. And you probably see advertisements on TV on that, especially during the fall of the year. Part D of Medicare covers drug coverage is what it covers. So some people could have A and B, some people could have C, which covers A, B, and or D, or some people could have A, B, and D separately. And these are all decisions that you're going to make as you get closer to it, to making your Medicare. Now, in addition to Parts A and B, which are traditional Medicare, there are supplemental Medicare plans. And supplemental Medicare plans are provided by private insurance companies. And you still have Medicare A and B, but they help to fill in some of the gaps that are not paid by Parts A and B. And they may help to pay with things such as the co-payments, co-insurance, and deductibles. But the main thing to keep in mind, the difference between like a Medicare supplement and a Medicare Advantage is a Medicare supplement plan is being offered by a private company that is regulated by the federal government. A Medicare Advantage plan, even though it's being offered by a private company, it is all part of Medicare. So a supplement is an extra plan that goes with the Medicare Part A and B. So as you think about Medicare costs, there's four things that go into that. There's premiums. Just like regular insurance, you're likely to have a monthly cost for your Medicare premium to pay for the plan. In addition to that, there's going to be a deductible that you would have to pay for out-of-pocket for covered services before the insurance, Medicare, or the supplemental plans start paying in. Some plans have what are called co-payments, where you would pay a fixed amount for a service, such as $20 or $30 to go see a doctor, for example. And then they all have what's called co-insurance, which says after I've met my deductible, maybe the plan pays 80% of the cost, and I pay the other 20 until I get to my out-of-pocket maximum each year. So those four things, the premiums, the deductibles, the co-payments, and the co-insurance, all make up your cost when you're in Medicare. One of the keys, though, about Medicare is that it kicks in at age 65. And this is true for all of us. It does not matter what year we were born in. It's not like Social Security where there's 62, 66, or 67, or 70. It's age 65 for everyone. And it's your age 65. Your spouse's age doesn't matter for this. And you can actually enroll in Medicare even if you work past age 65. And you may enroll in Medicare even if you have health coverage through your employer or your spouse's employer. You can even enroll in Medicare even though you may not be collecting your Social Security yet. So this is a question I get a lot, and because they're so closely related that Medicare and Social Security are two different programs, and you can enroll in one without participating in the other one yet, depending on when you're planning to start your benefits. But I will mention to you, you have an initial enrollment period for Medicare, and that period is the month you turn 65 to 3 months before then and 3 months after then. So there's a total of 7 months there from when you turn 65 to enroll in Medicare. If you do not enroll in Medicare during that period of time and do not have an excused reason not to enroll, there's going to be penalties that you'll pay for the rest of your life on your Medicare premiums. So as you're getting close to age 65, you really need to be paying attention to this. And I want to give this to you as a working, hey, I've got to take care of this, or I've at least got to research it, because sometimes the rules change. But right now, unless you have an excused reason not to enroll, such as you are covered under a qualified plan by your employer within those 7 months around age 65, if you fail to do the enrollment, you're going to get a penalty for the rest of your life every time you make your Medicare payments. Now, if you are still working and if you are covered by a qualified plan, you're not required under current rules to enroll. If you are about to turn 65, you need to talk to someone that does Medicare plans and is up on the rules. In addition to that, you can also enroll or make changes whenever you move to a new address, or if you lose your current coverage, or if your plan changes its contract with Medicare. not only during those times, but there's an open enrollment period between October 15th and December 7th every year where you can make changes from one Medicare plan to another. Maybe you were on Parts A and B last year and you want to go to a Part C, the Advantage plan this year. Now, you don't have to do that, and generally, as long as your plan continues to be offered, it'll just auto-renew, and you don't have to do anything each year. But you have the option to make changes during that open enrollment period. Now, I want to give you another resource. This is from that same Empower Retirement website that I talked with you about earlier, where you can log in and see your SERP savings benefit. Up at the top, there's a section that says healthcare cost. And this is a section that if you go to and do some work on it, it's something that only you would be able to see. Because what it does is it allows you to select what age you're thinking about retiring. It allows you to pick what state you're going to retire in. And then it gives a list of potential medical conditions a person might have. And you can select from any of those that you want to or that you actually have. And it will give you an average annual cost for healthcare for someone in that state at that age with those medical conditions. So this is something no one at Empower can see what you're doing because you might have a chance to select something about your own medical, which is covered under HIPAA. So this is completely private to you, but I want you to know that that information is there. So you could get an idea of how healthcare costs, more personalized to you, how that might impact your expenses and your needs in retirement. I do also want to give you the Medicare.gov website. If you've not been out there and looked at that, that is a great place to go because you can put in your zip code. You can find out what Medicare plans, what Medicare Advantage plans are available where you live at. You can also see some of the coverages and the details about what's available to you. And I would encourage you, if you're getting close to that age 65, you might want to take a look at that and just familiarize yourself a little bit with that. Connie, I've gone over a lot of information about Medicare. Did we have any questions come in about that?
We do not have any Medicare questions.
Oh, I am so glad to hear that. No, I'm teasing. But yes, if you have a question, I'll be glad to answer it as best I can. But boy, there's a lot of moving parts, and I would recommend you talk to a qualified, licensed agent that can help you with that. What I'd like to transition to now at this point, though, is talking about your retirement budget. And again, this is still part of the big picture, but it's helping us to get an idea of what your expenses may look like for what your goals are. So taking a look at your budget is really a great first step. So what all a budget does is it helps you see where your money's going. I'm not telling you how to spend your money. I just want you to see where it's going. It helps you to prioritize where you're going to be spending, may help you to see where your retirement savings might last longer, and it might help you to reach your financial goals. So when we think about a budget, I want you to think about some different categories. One of the categories is what are your current expenses? And we're going to look at both fixed and variables. What are your expectations in retirement? What do you want retirement to be? Will some of these things have additional cost? And what's that monthly income in retirement expected to be, like we talked about before? So when you think about creating this, start with your expenses. Your fixed expenses are things that are going to be the same month in and month out, such as mortgage or rent, insurance, car loans, payments that you're going to be making, things that are going to be pretty stable. Variable expenses are things that, of course, are going to vary: gas, groceries, utilities, vacations, things like that. These are things that are going to change from month to month and year to year. But then you need to think about these other topics. You know, am I going to move? Do I need to make some improvements on the house? Do I want to go on vacation? Am I going to take up a hobby? Is that hobby going to cost? Do we want to spend money on the grandkids? Are we stuck where we've got both grandkids and parents that we're taking care of? Where right now we're being drawn money-wise towards both and needing to help. Are we going to get a vacation home or a second home? These are all questions that may be a part of your retirement dream and your goal. And if it is, try to get an idea before we get there of what those costs would be so we can account for those. So one of the key places to start with what you're spending today. That gives you a great idea of what expenses are going to look like in the future. So what am I spending today? What are the other things I want to do? And how much are those going to cost? That gives us a great idea for looking at a spending plan. And the last topic I want to talk about here inside the big picture is that there are some emotional and psychological things that happen in retirement. You know, a lot of times we think about retirement and we get excited about it. And we think about, boy, this is going to be wonderful. This is going to be great. And then, Connie, one of the things I see an awful lot when people are sitting down with me to work on, hey, I'm going to retire next month is, boy, is this all going to work the way I thought it would? What do I need to be doing to make all of this happen? And then we get into retirement a little ways and we adjust to that new normal that we're not going into the county every day to see people are going in to do that job, or what do we fill our days with? And then over time, everything kind of becomes a new normal for us again. And one of the things we can look at as we're getting into this is, what am I doing in retirement to fulfill my emotional needs? Do I have a social group that I'm going to hang out with and spend time with? Are there sports and activities that I'm going to do? Is there a charity that I want to volunteer for? Do I have certain hobbies that I want to take advantage of? Am I going to do a part-time job after I leave county employment? All of these things, thinking about them in advance will help us as we make that transition to retirement. So we've talked about a lot of big picture things, and I want to transition now into digging into some details. And I want to talk about investing in your retirement accounts, and in particular, I'm going to concentrate primarily on your SERF savings, your 457 and your 401A. And there's some things we need to think about as we go into retirement. And the first thing I'm going to say is on your SERF 457 and 401A, the SERF savings benefits, as record kept through Empower Retirement. If your balance is over $1,000 in those accounts when you leave the county employment, you are not required to take that money out immediately. Sometimes I'll work with folks and they'll tell me, hey, Robert, I don't need this money today. I'd like to let it sit there and just grow till I need it. And if your balance is over $1,000 in each account, you can do that. There's no problem. You can take it out when you need to. Now, when you reach age 72, you'll have to start taking some whether you want to or not. It's what's called a required minimum distribution. And if you're no longer employed by the county and you're age 72, Empower will send you a letter letting you know what that is and how much has to come out. It's a percentage of the account, not the whole amount. Now, you always have the option of taking that money however you want to or need to, but sometimes people don't need it immediately and they'd like to see it grow a little bit before they're ready to retire. So we're going to talk about some of the principles that go into that. And one of the things I'd like you to think about is how much time you have till retirement. And a lot of times, the more years we have before retirement, the higher risk we try to make because in our accounts, because we're trying to build up and earn more. And generally, the lower we have until we are ready to need the money, the more conservative we may want to shift our goals. Now, I will tell you that if you want to do one of those individual reviews with me, that this is something that we'll talk through and run some statistical analysis about your goals and your retirement account and how much of it you're not likely going to need each year to make everything work with your pensions and your Social Security to be where you want to be in retirement financially, and how long that money is likely to last, because that'll impact our retirements. Connie, let me just give you an example. Sometimes people will say, hey, Robert, I'm retiring. I'm going to be 65. I want to be really conservative with my money. And I'll ask them, okay, that's fine. We can do that. But let me ask, when are you planning on taking this money out of your SERF savings? Are you going to need it for day-to-day expenses? And sometimes, Connie, the answer I get is no. I've got a SERF pension. I got a logger's pension. I got a Social Security. Matter of fact, all three of those are going to add up to about what I was making, or maybe a little more than what I was making while I was working. So I don't think I'll need this money in the savings plan for 15, 20 years. Well, in that situation, we want to be thinking about managing this money not to retirement date, but managing it all the way through retirement, through your life expectancy, because you might have money in that account, in that example, for another 15 to 20 years after you retire, not just till you retire. So at Empower, we look at investors in three categories. There's some people would like to have professional help. They want to have somebody manage the money for them. Some people say, you know what, I want to manage it on my own, but I sure could use some help, and I've got some questions. And that's what we would call the help me do it. And some of the folks we work with, they want to do it all on their own. And it really doesn't matter which one of these categories you fall in. We want to help you with whichever one of those categories is a fit for you. So I'm going to talk through all three of these and some of the resources that are available to you. For people that want professional help, you can use the My Total Retirement. We also call that a managed account. And in that, you get a professionally managed account where we will personalize an investment strategy for you. We do the work to review that on a quarterly basis and keep it on track so that you stay on track for your future. We will look at the whole big picture, your savings, your pensions, your Social Security, how much you're putting into the SERP savings each year, for example, what your balance already is, and when you need the money. So these are all things we look at to try to get a comprehensive picture. And then we work out a one-on-one plan for you. Now, while there is no guarantee that this will result in a profit or avoidance of a loss, this is a way for you to get professional help for a small fee. If you have questions about that, that is something that I can answer individual questions for in one of those individual meetings that you would want to book with me otherwise. Now, just to clarify, in the email that I sent you all, this is not a sales presentation. I do not work on a commission. My job, when I work with you individually, I am what is called a fiduciary. I work in your best interest. So if this is something that you have questions about to see if it's in your best interest, I will be glad to answer those. You will not get any arm twisting from me about which choice you go into, but this is one of three choices where you could get professional management of your account for a small fee. In addition to that, if you're more of the, hey, I just like some help, there are some wonderful tools, not only that I can run for you and give you some recommendations, and then it's up to you to implement those. But there's also some wonderful tools through the Empower website I've mentioned several times to help you get a good idea of what investments are a good fit for you, how much you should be saving for retirement, whether rolling money into your SERP savings plan from another plan would be a benefit to you if you had a 401k, for example, at a previous job, things of that nature. So if you're in this, hey, I'd like a little bit of help, or I've got some questions, but I want to take care of it all myself, that's fine. If you've got questions, schedule one of those meetings with me. I'll help you any way I can to get you the information you need so you can make your decision. And sometimes people, in addition to that or instead of that, want to do all of the picking themselves. And folks, I can answer questions for you about what funds are available inside the SERP savings plan to invest in, how the funds are invested, and then you can make the decision on how you would like to invest your funds. But we're here as a resource for you, so I would encourage you seriously, if I can help you, schedule one of those private individual phone call meetings, and we'll be glad to do that. In addition to that, I'm going to refer you back to the Empower website as well. There's a short questionnaire that will help you determine which one of those types of investors are you. They do it for me, they help me do it, or I'll do it myself, and which one resonates best with you. Now, the next area I'd like to talk about is what to do with your money in retirement. And as I mentioned earlier, you're not necessarily required to take the money out of your SERP savings, your 457 or 401A, when you retire. But there are some ways to take money out and different strategies. And some things to think about is longevity. Look at the other members of your family of origin. How long do they normally live? That may give you an idea of what your life expectancy would look like. We also need to look at investment returns, and our strategies 1 year into retirement may be different than they would be 5 or 10 years into retirement. We're going to talk a little bit here about inflation, and we're also going to talk about some expenses that you may run into. So one strategy is what's called a constant dollar strategy, where you just pull out the same amount every year. In this example, it's $20,000 a year that this individual's pulling out, and they increase it by 3% a year for inflation. So the first year they'd pull out $20,000, the second year they'd pull out $20,600. And the SERP savings plan benefit is different than the pension. The pension will pay you the rest of your life. But the pile of money that's in the SERP savings plan benefit, if it lasts beyond your lifetime, it goes to your beneficiaries. But if you pull it all out while you're still living, it's done. It does not necessarily pay just your lifetime. It is a pile of money. You use it however you want. But when it's done, it's done. Or if you pass before it's done, it will go to your beneficiaries that you have on file. Now, Jim mentioned earlier that you need to keep your pension beneficiaries up to date. And I will second that, but I will also mention to you that the savings beneficiaries are a separate set of beneficiaries that you keep up to date with Empower Retirement. So if you've had a life change where you needed to talk with Jim and the pension team about adjusting your pension beneficiaries, you probably need to talk with us about Empower to make sure we have the right beneficiaries, because changing one doesn't change the other, and we need to make sure we keep everything up to date for you. A second strategy that some people do for retirement, for pulling money out of their savings, is they just pull out a certain percentage, maybe 4 or 5% every year. And whatever their balance was that year, they take that percent out. Now, what that does when we have good markets, they'll pull out more money. When we have down markets, they'll pull out less money. So there are pros and cons to these different strategies. A third strategy is just doing your required minimum distribution, where you get the letter from Empower every year that says this is how much has to come out, and that's what you take out each year. Now, a fourth strategy that I will mention to you is what's called a capital preservation method, where basically you're not taking out any of the principal, you're just taking out the earnings. A final strategy I will mention, if you are using the professional help that I mentioned to you earlier that has the small fee attached, they will help you determine how much you should pull out each year to have the money last your life expectancy and how the remaining funds should be invested. It's what we call a spin down strategy, and they will work that out with you to help you understand where the numbers are coming in at based off of your goals, so you know how much will work for you. Again, another resource I'd like to give you this evening is from the Empower website. There is a spin down or a withdrawal strategy where you can put in different variables and see how long your lump sum of money would likely last based off of your goals and how you're likely to spend the money. I would like to talk a little bit about taxes. And Jim mentioned taxes on the pension, and taxes on the savings, SERP savings, are done a little differently. The types of plans, the 457 and the 401A, the IRS says that whenever you take a distribution from that it is taxable, but Empower is required to withhold 20% of your distribution and send that in for federal income tax at a minimum. We can withhold more than that, but we can't withhold less than that. So what happens if you file your taxes at the end of the year and you didn't owe 20% of that in taxes? Well, you get a refund, just like if the county withheld from your paycheck right now on payroll taxes. Well, this would be the same type of situation. If you don't owe 20% by the time you file your income taxes, you'll get a refund for any overpayment, but we do not have a choice. We have to withhold a minimum of 20% to send in. If you talk to your tax person and they tell you, hey, you need to withhold more, we can do more than that, but the IRS will not allow us to do less than that. And this money, when you take it out of your SERP savings plan in the future someday, it will be subject to federal and or state income tax as a taxable event. But this is where your tax advisor comes in, because just like right now, you know, there are deductions so that not everything you get in income is taxed, even though it is taxable. That will be a similar situation in retirement. I do also want to mention that depending on what your income is, that some of your Social Security could be taxed for income tax, not FICA taxes. And these are examples that I've got on the chart right now from 2019 that says, for example, if a family was filing a joint return and they had $44,000 or more of income, that 85% of their Social Security would be included in their taxable income. Not that they would pay 85% tax on their Social Security, but 85% of their Social Security would be taxable, and they would owe taxes on that percentage of it. In the same example, that joint return, if they were making between $32,000 and $44,000, 50% of their Social Security would be taxable. And if they were making less than $32,000, none of their Social Security would be taxable in 2019. Now, this chart changes from year to year. This is one of the reasons that we recommend you talk to a good tax person. Like Jim mentioned earlier on the Missouri Public Pension Exemption, you do need to be working with a professional to help you get everything in line so you can take advantage of everything that you're due and still pay what they require you to pay on this. So again, there's my disclosure. Talk to a tax advisor to help with that situation. I do want to spend a few minutes talking about inflation this evening, and this particular slide shows the impact of inflation over a 28-year period of time on the cost of a gallon of milk, a house, a movie ticket, or a new car. And most of us on this phone, on this webinar, probably remember some of these prices and how they've changed over the years. Keep in mind, if you retire at 62, there's a chance, a good chance, you may live into your late 80s or early 90s. So you could see another 28, 30 years of inflation on your money and on your expenses during retirement. And this is one of the reasons that on your SERP savings side, you really need to have a good retirement investment strategy going that we're going to be working with you on, not just to retirement, but through retirement to help you offset these increases in inflation. Now, I am not making a recommendation, but I do want to show you what has happened to the cost of $1 over 30 years. If we look at the far right, the yellow ball that's there says that $1 30 years ago would have bought the same amount as $3.24 does today. So that's inflation. If I had taken that same $1 and just put it in a very safe like a government bond or a savings account, that $1 would have grown to $2.43 over 30 years. So it would not have kept up with the cost of inflation. If I would have taken it and put it in a set of bonds, a good set of bonds, it would have grown to $5.90. So that dollar would actually be more valuable today with the earnings than what it was 30 years ago when you account for inflation. And if I'd taken the same $1 and put it into an S&P 500 mix of large company stocks, it would have grown to $17.30, drastically outpacing inflation. Now, we would never recommend a person put all of their money in large company stocks. There's just too much volatility and short-term risk in that. But by blending your investments between stocks and bonds and capital preservations and blending them to try to get an appropriate risk for you in retirement, you can help to keep up or give you a higher probability of keeping up and outpacing inflation, which means that your money continues to grow relative to the cost of goods and services. One of the other things that I want to mention is that if you are too conservative or too aggressive as you enter into retirement, it can impact your retirement savings negatively. This is something that you probably, if you have questions about how your investment strategy is right now, this is one of those things where you would want to schedule that meeting with me. I'm going to wrap up with just a couple things. These are just copies of the websites I've given to you, SSA.gov, Medicare.gov. Also some IRS guidance is on the IRS.gov. And then Plan Sponsor Council of America website has some good information that you may want to look at from time to time. You can also go to that Empower Retirement website. You can use it on a computer, a laptop, a tablet, an iPhone, an Android phone, an iPhone watch. You can call me. You can email me. I am always glad to help you with any questions. You can reach out directly to Empower. We are here to help you any way we can. And I know we've gone a long time here without taking much of a break with a lot of information. So I'm going to stop for just a minute. Connie, do we have questions that have come in?
Yes, we definitely have some questions, and very good ones too. So back to the Medicare, and I apologize, I didn't see this question until after we moved on, but so if I am still working at age 65 and plan to work longer, and I'm covered under my employer health insurance, then will the enrollment period for Medicare change without the penalty?
Under current Medicare rules, it will, assuming that your employer plan qualifies as a Medicare substitute level plan. So you need to talk to your HR person. I would still run that past somebody that deals with Medicare and helps people select the appropriate plans so that you've got all of that in play. But I would definitely talk to a Medicare professional. But under current rules, if you have a qualifying employer plan, you can delay.
Okay. What is the difference in the two savings plans? And I believe she's referring to the 457 and the 401A.
Awesome. That's a great question. The 457 can only accept voluntary contributions from a government employee's paycheck. These are IRS rules because when you retire from the county, the money in the 457 is available at any age. It is the only plan that is that way. Like 401ks, traditional or Roth IRAs, 403bs, 401as, all of those are subject to a 59.5 minimum age. Otherwise, you get a 10% IRS penalty for an early withdrawal. So SERF is set up in such a way that the money you put in voluntarily goes into the 457, but the match money cannot go into that. And if you are in a non-loggers county that has a 0.7% mandatory contribution into the 401a side of SERF savings, that also, since it's mandatory and not voluntary, cannot go into the 457. So because of IRS rules, we have to have a 401a to hold the match. And for those counties where the 0.7% mandatory contribution, the non-loggers covered counties or employees, those have to go in the 401a. So they are IRS rules on why we have to have both. Both of those will show up, though, when you log in at Empower, and you can see the balance on both and the combined balance.
Okay, thank you. Can you move back to the slide that has your phone number? Somebody's asking for your number. So if you can move back and we can display that, that would probably be the best way, or your contact information.
I will do so. Let me get there. It should come up now.
Yes, I can see it, so thank you. And then we have a question, what is the fee for a fiduciary? So if I'm interpreting this question correctly, I believe the question is, what is the fee for the My Total Retirement? You mentioned a couple of times there's a small fee. Can you cover that with us?
Sure. It is based off of the size of your account. So if your balance is under $100,000, the fee is 0.45 of 1% per year. So it's a little bit less than 0.5% on the first up to $100,000. If your SERF savings account is more than $100,000 but less than $250, then the first $100,000 is at the 0.45 of 1. But anything above 100 but below 250 is at 0.35 of 1. So it goes down a little bit each increment that your balance goes up. Now, what I would encourage you, if you've got an account and you're considering that, again, talk to me. I'll give you, and not only what the percentages are for your specific account, but I'll give you an estimate of what that looks like based off of your balance. Connie, the way that the fee is collected in that is Empower does not send you a separate bill for that. They just prorate how much is due each quarter and bill it to your SERF savings account directly. And it is something that if a person has interest in that, they do not sign a contract. It is something they can use as long as they want, but they can cancel at any time for any reason without penalty.
Okay. And then the next question is, when I terminate from the county, can I still meet with Robert?
Absolutely. There's no requirement that you have to work for the county to be able to meet with me. As long as you have a balance in that SERF savings, I'm still here to help you.
Okay.
And I would say, Connie, that at the end when they get the pop-up, if somebody wants to schedule a meeting, I've got openings for the remainder of this week and openings all week next week available that people can schedule.
Okay, thank you. All right, I don't see any other questions for you, Robert. I do have a couple of follow-up ones for Jim. And so the first one is, if I retire at age 62 from the county and I go to work somewhere else, can I draw from SERF?
Yes, if you if you're vested, of course, you're 8 years in, so you can draw your pension. You can go to work anywhere else. It will not affect your SERF pension. The only area where it gets tricky is if you go back to a county SERF position and go above 1,000 hours a year. Then your SERF pension would be suspended until you retire again. But you can go to work anywhere else. It will not affect your pension.
Okay. If you choose the joint survivor, if you pass away, how long does the beneficiary receive benefits?
For the remainder of the beneficiary's life.
Okay. Let's see. My questions are still coming in, so hang on one second while I'm trying to navigate between both the Q&A and the chat and try not to miss anything. Okay, who can be a co-annuitant on the joint and survivor?
It can be anybody, but if the age difference is too large, some of the options may not be available. If you'll recall, the options are 50%, 75%, or 100%. So let us run that for you. We'll want to know the age, the birth date of the beneficiary, and we'll know which ones of those are available.
Okay. A question on survivor benefits. If you, generally speaking, if you take 50% survivor benefits, how much does that affect your withdrawal?
I think the question is how much of a haircut do you take versus the single life annuity. The single life annuity gets you the most money. The other options like the joint survivor or the 10-year certain come at a little bit of a haircut. It's usually not too much. Again, we can show you that as an estimate, or when the time comes for you to actually make a decision, you'll see the actual hard and fast numbers.
Okay. What is the pension exemption?
Yeah, there's a public pension exemption in Missouri, and I would encourage people to speak to a tax preparer for that. We just want you to know that it's out there, but certainly we're not in a position to give tax advice to people.
Okay. Is the benefit for survivor for 10 years after my death, or is it for the life for the spouse? And I believe you've answered this, but I wanted you to clarify because there's the 10 years. So sure. I think there's some room for clarification there.
Sure. If you choose the joint and survivor option and you pass first, your survivor is paid for the remainder of his or her life. If you choose the 10-year certain option, we're paying you for the remainder of your life, even if you live beyond 10 years. But if you die during those first 10 years, we will pay your beneficiary for the remainder of those 10 years. And then at that point, the payments to your beneficiary stops. If you live beyond 10 years, we're paying you for the rest of your life, but at that point, there's no longer any money left over to pay a beneficiary once you've been retired 10 years.
Okay, a lot of great questions. Jim, would my benefits increase if I wait to retire after age 62? Say I wait till age 65, if my average of my 2 highest years stays the same?
Well, we're looking at two things. We're looking at total years of service up to 29. So if you haven't reached 29 years yet, then yes, it would benefit you to continue working and get more creditable years of salary and then of service. And then we're looking for the 2 highest years of salary whenever they occurred. If you don't think those are going to increase, then that part would probably not be affected. So you're going to have to talk to a benefits specialist here at SERF and have her run some numbers for you and see if it would behoove you to continue working.
Okay, we just have a couple more. I know we're getting close to time here, but great questions, so I want to make sure we cover them all. This one is for Robert, I believe. Can a logger's partial lump sum be put into a SERF savings as a tax shelter if you haven't been contributing to a SERF savings plan?
We would need to have the SERF savings plan open, but yes, we can accept the rollovers from the logger's partial lump sums that you have available, but the plan would have to be open, and you can't open it once you are retired. And you will not get your logger's lump sum until you've been retired several months. So we would have to have the plan open, but we can accept it. It would keep it from being taxable at the time it came out of loggers. It would go directly into the 401A side of SERF savings, and then it would be taxable as you take it out of that in the future.
Okay. Just a couple more. These are for you, Robert. How long do I have to separate from the county after age 55 and return? Well, this one could be for Jim too. I'm sorry. How long do I have to separate from the county after age 55 and return to work 1,000 hours per year?
On the pension side of SERF, you have to be gone for at least 30 days. If you come back fewer than 30 days, it's as if you never left. As far as we're concerned, everything would just continue. Once you're gone 30 days, then you have separated. And if you were to come back after that, that's where you want to keep it below 1,000 hours a year, or be prepared for your pension to be suspended until you retire a second time.
Okay, this one is for Robert. I promised 2 more, so this is one of 2. On the savings plan, if I die, does my beneficiary have to cash out the account, or can the beneficiary keep the funds invested?
The beneficiary is going to have several options depending on their age when they inherit it and what the current tax laws are. But what will happen is they will have several options, and Empower will work with them to let them know what their options are and how that they wish to proceed from there.
Okay. And can I put a lump sum into the 457 plan when I retire?
The only way we can accept lump sums is if it's a rollover from another qualifying plan. These plans are what the IRS considers to be employer-sponsored plans. So generally that means we have to get the money from your paycheck, from a match from the employer, or in this case from SERF, or as a rollover from another qualified plan. So for example, if somebody, Connie, had $10,000 they wanted to put in their 457, they can't write me a check for $10,000 to put into that. But what they could do is increase their contributions to say $1,000 a month out of their paycheck and take $1,000 a month out of that $10,000 to live on. And then 10 months from then, they could reduce their contributions down to normal again. They might not get matched on it, but it would have the net effect of moving that money over time into the 457.
Okay, and I lied. One more question just came in, and this will be our last one. If I retire at age 62 and go back as a 1,000-hour employee with the county, does the 1,000 hours renew on a calendar year basis or retirement date basis?
1,000 hours per calendar year.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead. First of all, thanks to everybody who stuck with us. I know we're a little bit over time, but excellent, excellent questions. And I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us. Like I said, once you close out, a survey will pop up. And if you would just take just a couple of minutes to reply to that, we'd really appreciate it. We'd love to hear your feedback. Additionally, another window will pop up that will have a link to schedule a meeting with Robert if you would like to do that. And again, thanks for attending, and everybody have a great evening.